I told myself I would never find a job that's like purposeful or meaningful. So what I will do, and maybe it's not for you, but maybe you can try it out eventually. I will take a shitty job that can pay okay, and maybe I can get by, depending on where I live and depending on my situation, with working 20, 25 hours a week. And working 20, 25 hours a week enabled me to do things that I actually like making these videos. And that's where I found purpose. I found purpose and meaning outside of labor, even though, anything you do can be considered labor, like, doing these videos or reading books or watching movies or just engaging with culture and art. Talk with an interesting take, which I want to answer, but interesting not in the sense like, anyway, something worth discussing. Hawk says, automation is equally a threat to capitalism and communism. If you automate labor, you take away people's source of meaning. In both systems, people who become useless will check out rather than live. I think that kind of idea comes from like more of a capitalist mindset, and it's normal to have a capitalist mindset when you grow up and you believe that there's no alternative. Capitalists will hammer in your head that your job is your source of meaning, and that the job that you do is your source of meaning, and if you don't have a job, then you don't have any meaning. And that's hammered, and that's actually the point I wanted to come to for another segment, and maybe that's a good segue to go into it. That we equate finding a purpose with a job, or finding meaning and a job. And very often we tell children, well, you really have to love your job. You really have to like make your passion a job. And if you make your passion a job, you'll never work a day in your life and things like that. Or you need to find meaning in your job. But I believe that it's not, at least in how our system is made. Not only is it hard to find a purposeful job, but I think it's almost impossible. Because no matter what, if you don't work for yourself and you work for someone else, you will always work for the benefit and the interests of someone else, and you'll never be in control of the job that you do. So if your meaning is mediated by the interest of someone else that you work for, that makes it really hard. I'm not saying it's impossible to find meaning or purpose in your job. It is. I am privileged in the sense that I find meaning in my job and purpose in my job, but also I'm self-employed. If I worked for someone else, it might be harder for me. I gave up with the idea of finding a job with purpose a long time ago. And I think that's kind of it's a capitalist myth, the idea that working for someone else can be purposeful or meaningful. Not that it can be, but that it will be if you find the right job. And if you don't find the right job that's meaningful and purposeful to you, it's your fault because you didn't find it. But it's out there. But I think that's a myth. It's a myth that contributes to the idea that working for someone else can be purposeful and meaningful, and that's where you can get your meaning from. But I disagree with that, obviously. I think that meaning and purpose can come from, well, for one, I'm very biased in that sense, but from art and culture, which very often has nothing to do with people's jobs, right? I made a whole video on purposeless jobs with a taxi driver, which I recommend. I really enjoyed making that video too. And I gave up with the idea of finding a purposeful job. I was studying photography, and I was like, all right, this is my last stretch. If I can't find purpose in getting a job for photography, or if I don't find meaning or purpose in that job, then I'll never find a purposeful or meaningful job. And when I studied photography, I had some gigs, and I thought they were so fucking boring. And then, there's wedding photography, portrait photography for like family. Oh my God. And I was like, that might be the only way of sustaining a photography job or a photography career. And that's not what meaning is, at least not to me. And I came to the conclusion that, it might be really hard to find meaning and purpose in a job. And it's so hard that I believe that it's kind of fooling people to say that you can do it. Again, you can do it, but it's like winning a lottery ticket, at least to me. And even if you find sometimes glimpses of purpose and meaning in your jobs, I still believe that it's people are fooling themselves into that idea. Most people are happy that for the end of the workday. Most people are happy that Friday is finally coming. It's not a coincidence that so many people share the idea of thank God it's Friday, or oh my God, I hate Mondays. Like, you don't hate Mondays. You don't love Fridays. You hate your job. Most people hate their jobs. They find it purposeless. They find it meaningless. And even if they do find some glimpse of meaning from time to time, most of the time they find it meaningless. So, but what I like, I'll just give I'll continue my anecdote. When I was doing photography, I stopped because I was like, all right, I'm not going to get meaning from this, and I'm going to be always scraping for contracts and gigs and all that. And I worked as a librarian at one point, and then eventually I worked as a fast food worker for the longest time. For the longest time, in a year and a half, and I hated it. And I quit I would say less than a year ago, before I could actually live from this channel. Like, less than a year ago, I wasn't flipping burgers. Maybe sometimes I was flipping burgers, but I was like mostly taking orders and selling apple pies. And I hated it. I despised it. But at the same time, I told myself I would never find a job that's like purposeful or meaningful. So what I will do, and maybe it's not for you, but maybe you can try it out eventually, I will take a shitty job that can pay okay, depending on where you are. Fast food restaurants can pay okay. The conditions are shit, but like, it can pay okay. And maybe I can get by, depending on where I live and depending on my situation, with working 20, 25 hours a week. And working 20, 25 hours a week enabled me to do things that I actually like making these videos. Or not these videos, but the videos I make on my channel. This is a live stream. And that's where I found purpose. I found purpose and meaning outside of labor, even though, anything you do can be considered labor, like, doing these videos or reading books or watching movies or just engaging with culture and art. And this whole idea that, to go back to Hawk's comment, and we can put it up on the screen because this is going to be a segment. And if Hawk, you disagree with that, we'll censor your name. But automation is equally a threat to capitalism and communism. If you automate labor, you take away people's source of meaning. In both systems, people who become useless will check out rather than live. But that's the thing. In capitalism, if you don't work, you're useless. But I believe in communism, the whole idea is to free ourselves from work, to be useful in other ways aside from work, to be useful politically by advocating for whatever, maybe not political change, but like for projects, for being implicated in your community decision making through either through direct democracy or through committees or through discussion. When you're freed up from labor, you can do that. You can better engage and participate in your community. If you're freed up from work, from labor, and by labor, like being useless or whatever, I mean you can do art, you can do culture, which is not useless, but to capitalism, if a job doesn't make you money or doesn't allow you to live, then it is useless. But if things are automated, you're freeing yourself up to so many things, and to grow as an individual, and to become a better individual, and be surrounded by people who are also better individuals, because they're also freed from work and freed from the anxiety of labor. So yeah, no, I disagree with that, but I think it comes from a mindset of like a very capitalist mindset, like the capitalist realism, the idea that capitalism is the only way things have been and can be. And therefore, if, for example, people can't find meaning in their jobs, then therefore they can't find meaning in anything else. I'll end this segment. And it was very short, but I think it's an important thing to talk about. I'll end this segment by saying that I remember when I was working in the fast food and I was working with older ladies at the cashier as a cashier, and that was less than a year ago again. And I remember saying like, oh yeah, I'm not working more than 20, 25 hours here because I really hate it and I have enough as it is and I can just live my life, do what I want at home. And that cashier lady was like, well, like, why don't you want to work more, right? What do you do at home all day? You play video games? You just, you just stay at home and all day and just do nothing? Why don't you work? And that's a symptom of capitalist realism, or I think the same kind of symptom that Hawke, or like that underlies Hawke's comment. And it's the idea that if you're not working a job that you don't like and you're just doing the things you love at home, you are not doing anything. And perhaps that lady, when she's at home, the only thing she does is relax. The only thing she does, and it's very possible, that person, that lady, when she comes at home, she turns her brain off, watches TV, cooks supper, and then goes to sleep. Wakes up the next morning, cooks breakfast, goes to work, comes back from work at home in the evening, makes a supper, turns off the brain, and watches TV. And to that person who is so, and I feel like it's not her fault. Like, I'm not blaming her on that. Like, I might sound a bit angry at that person, but it's not their fault. But this whole idea is like, all right, because I am so in that capitalist wheel of labor, going back at home and shutting my brain off, then every time I'm not, if you're not doing labor, the labor that you don't like, then when you're at home, you're shutting your brain off, because that's what I do. And what that creates is people who don't find any way of having purpose or meaning outside of labor. So if labor is automated, then there's no way of having any meaning or purpose outside of it. So they'll check out instead of living. It's like, you can find meaning outside of work. Don't worry about it. Sometimes it takes a bit of time, of effort, but you can find meaning out of work. And it's much, much, much more rewarding than the meaning that you will find at work, because it'll come from yourself. And I believe that's the most important meaning you can get, the one that comes from within. That's a good ending for this segment, right? I hope so. Hope you agree.